Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Unique Items. Today, we're going to be looking at another unique item, and this one is called the Jacinth Shell, which I'm pretty sure that I have there. The Jacinth Shell is an amazing little piece of equipment that I'm not really sure is going to get the love that it deserves because of how good Ethereal's Might is and how good the new Shroud of False Death is, because both of them are just so amazing in terms of how they can enhance your character. In fact, I think Shroud has overtaken Ethereal's as one of the most beloved body pieces because of all the amazing things that it can do for you. However, the Jacinth Shell is also really interesting, and let's go over this together and we're going to talk about it. So first off, it is a item that you're going to want to find in the Ancestral version because it does have some nice effects. It has a health bonus of 424 to 457, which is pretty much the standard value for most plates these days. It does have a really nice life on hit, and as you can see, mine is greater affixed at 35. Life on hit is obviously going to be a way for you to sustain yourself. It's not always something that you're looking for, but it's something that will, in fact, help you stay alive in dangerous situations. And in this particular armor, and in this particular case, the life on hit is actually quite valuable because of the mechanic, and we'll talk about that later. It also has a nice 13.5 to 22.5% damage reduction while injured. I had thought that the damage reduction while injured was gone. I haven't seen damage reduction while injured on a piece of equipment since people were exploiting it with those low health builds. And speaking of low health builds, this armor might allow you to do that again. You can also see that I have +4 to endurance here, which is Spiritborn only. And if we take a look and see what endurance does, it is casting a defensive skill grants 5 vigor. So 4 ranks is what I currently have on this particular piece of equipment, which means that I'm going to get 5, 10, 15, 20. Plus you could get 3 ranks yourself if you wanted to, so that's 25, 30, 35. Right, so you can get a total of 35 vigor back every single time you cast one of your defensive abilities, which is definitely a very strong way that you can restore vigor. The Spiritborn, however, has 1,000 million ways to restore vigor, and it's probably one of the easiest characters by far to restore vigor on, so I'm not entirely sure that it's necessary, but it could be an interesting way for you to get vigor back if you're spamming defensive skills. It also has a unique effect, and the unique effect is the main reason why you're going to come to this armor. It's pretty much the sole reason you're going to use it. Spending Vigor heals you for 10% of your maximum life. Up to 10%. It's 1 to 10. So you definitely want to see if you can get a 10. So every single time you spend any kind of Vigor for any ability whatsoever, you're going to get 10% of your maximum life back. On top of this, every second, your active cooldowns each drain 10% of your maximum life from you to reduce their durations by 3 seconds. Now, what does this mean? Does this mean it just drains your life all the time? Well, no. It doesn't drain your life all the time. It actually does something a little different. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and read the flavor text. This ceremonial armor was adorned during the Hogwarts Legacy, where sacred blood is drawn by Jacinth lancets and offered to flames. It retains the scent of incensed smoke and scorched copper. So as you can see, my HP is not just diminishing. I have my HP, and it is staying relatively static. So what does it do, then, if it's not going to pull my HP all the time? Well, it's only going to pull my HP when I have an active cooldown that needs to be reset, which means that if I'm attacking with something that has a cooldown, you're going to notice that my HP is going to start to drain to restore that cooldown. But as you can clearly see, my cooldown came back almost instantaneously because of the Jacinth Shell. A very powerful piece of armor indeed. Now, the more cooldowns you use, the faster this is going to drain your HP. Notice, however, it does not kill you. So, despite the fact that you're using it to reset your cooldowns, it will not kill you to reset your cooldowns. It will stop at what looks like around 10% HP. I'm not sure. I think that's about 10%, yeah. So, about 10% HP is what you're going to end up with. And you can heal yourself. So that's the reason why this armor has life on hit, and it's also the reason why it has a ability to get your HP back by spending vigor. So as long as you have something that is spending vigor, you can maintain your life by just simply counteracting the bonus entirely. In fact, in this particular case, let me see if I can do this with this character. I don't have one that spends vigor, but I do have one that can hit the target. And as you can see, I'm able to counteract the loss just by hitting the target with the life on hit. Now, if I took a vigor spending skill, like say Stinger, as an example, and I attack with Stinger, I'll get 10% back every single time I hit the target, so I can get most of it back. So as long as you're spending large amounts of resource, Jacinth Shell isn't really a big deal, because all of your spending is going to immediately cause the issue to be fixed, right? So you're gonna restore that HP as it's draining. Of course, the more cooldowns you have, the harder it's going to be for you to maintain your HP. If you're using, say, the Rod of Kepe-Leke, you're going to be spending resource every single time, and you're going to be spamming an ability, so it shouldn't be too bad. You also can combine this together with other ways to restore your life, so you could potentially be using, say, Andariel's Visage. Andariel's Visage gives you life on hit as well, or you could be restoring your health in a myriad of other ways. For instance, Scourge has a restoration of life, which is actually pretty good. So if I have multiple training dummies here, and I'm attacking with Scourge, Scourge is going to hit the targets, and it's going to allow me to steal life from the targets as I am going around and doing my little doojank here. So you can clearly see that I'm able to restore my life and keep it up to full, despite the fact that Jacinth Shell is doing its job to reduce many cooldowns. As you can see, I have pretty much all of my cooldowns running at the same time here, and I'm still able to maintain my health. Now, should I stop attacking for whatever reason with all my cooldowns currently active, then that wouldn't necessarily be a good idea. It's actually an extremely powerful item that has a very clear negative, which can be canceled out utilizing pieces of equipment. It can make its way into a ton of builds, and could potentially be combined with other effects to get you even more cooldown reduction. Let me give you an example of what I mean. In the Spiritborn tree, there is a key passive called Prodigy's Tempo. I'm currently using Noxious Resonance because that's how my build works. But if I switch over to Prodigy's Tempo with Jacinth Shell, every single time I use 3 consecutive uses of Rushing Claw, I'm going to get a cooldown reduction as well. And let me kind of show you how this works without Jacinth Shell first. And you can clearly see that I'm resetting my skills by using Prodigy's Tempo. Now, if I were to combine Jacinth Shell and Prodigy's Tempo together, as you can see, I basically have infinite cooldowns at my disposal at any time to be able to do anything I want to do with them, because they're going to essentially always be up for me. And this is, of course, due to, number one, Prodigy's Tempo resetting after 3 consecutive casts, or giving me a cooldown reduction after 3 consecutive casts. And then, of course, also, this is applying it to Jacinth Shell, which is reducing my HP and also giving me the reset as well. This build that I put together is absolutely insane, by the way. It's such a fun one. Jacinth Shell definitely works its way into some builds that require large amounts of cooldown reduction. It can be used as a way to spam non-standard skills or turn non-standard skills into standard skills. So as an example, say you wanted to make an entire build around Concussive Stomp, which is a defensive skill. There's not really any way to convert this into a vigor spender, but you could potentially put Concussive Stomp on your bar, utilizing something like Jacinth Shell, and when you use the Concussive Stomp, it's going to bring Concussive Stomp up faster for you. So you're going to be able to get more Concussive Stomps in as you go that direction. You can also grab more charges for it and things like that, and there's definitely some ways that you can get better usefulness out of non-standard abilities that you wouldn't necessarily think of. One non-standard ability that I'm taking advantage of currently is Toxic Skin. I'm taking advantage of the fact that Toxic Skin has a rather large amount of poisoning damage, and let me kind of show you what I mean. You see the part here that says, while active, Toxic Skin's poisoning is increased by 100% to 476,339 damage over 11 seconds, right? Now, watch this. Now what does the tooltip say? 2,900,000, whatever. I've seen way higher than that. I've been able to get it up to 6 million on the list. The thing is that Toxic Skin is an ability that can see additional increases, and something that you may want to keep up on the regular basis. And there's a lot of skills like that, and that's where Jacinth Shell comes in. It allows you to spam abilities that you might not otherwise be able to spam. If you combine it with cooldown reduction, you can get more out of Jacinth Shell as well, because it can bridge the gap between the maximum cooldown reduction that you're capable of achieving. For instance, if I have the maximum cooldown reduction that I could possibly get on an ability, like for instance, I'm currently at 39% from that item, and I probably have some other cooldown reduction here on other items, but it doesn't matter. The thing is there's a maximum amount of cooldown reduction that you're capable of getting to. Once you reach that number, Jacinth Shell is a way that you can potentially bypass the cooldown reduction limit, which I think is 65%, if I remember correctly. Once you hit 65%, that's it. It doesn't go any lower. This is going to help you bypass that 65% and get you even further into a point where you can pretty much just spam an ability. Let's go back to Concussive Stomp for a second, and let's utilize Prodigy's Tempo. And we're going to play around with like spamming Prodigy's Tempo, or Concussive Stomp, right? So I'm going to use Prodigy's Tempo. We're also going to put Jacinth Shell back on, so that we get as many stomps as possible. And as you can see, I'm capable of essentially just spamming Concussive Stomp now. And this is, of course, without even using the second charge. If I use the second charge for Concussive Stomp, which is in Reinforced Concussive Stomp, I could just simply pull this one for the moment. This is going to allow me to reset it even faster. And as you can see, I'm pretty much able to just spam Concussive Stomp as fast as I would humanly well please. There's also other ways that you could potentially utilize Concussive Stomp as well, but this is not really the point. Concussive Stomp is not really the point of this. The point of this is that you can, in fact, create a situation in which you can utilize non-standard abilities through Jacinth Shell, as long as you're able to counteract the negative effects of the ability. So do keep that in mind.
Mr. Goody Two Shoes, Mr. Goody Two Shoes. Ginger Evil Mentor here. Why bother farming when you can go to MMOEXP.com and simply purchase your items in gold? GGM would have you farm the items. What a pathetic being. Use code GEM Ginger Evil Mentor for 6% off your entire purchase. And don't tell Ginger Gaming Mentor that I was here.
Now, where can you potentially get yourself a Jacinth Shell? That is a good question. So the Jacinth Shell is an item that does drop from specific bosses. And if you take a look on Diablo 4.life, we do have a drop tool right here. So target farming uniques. And if you go to the Spiritborn under Jacinth Shell, you'll find that the Jacinth Shell drops from Lord Zir. So if you're looking for this particular item, you're going to want to farm Lord Zir. Now, this season specifically, and I think it's very important to talk about this, is that they added a buff into the game. It is this one right here in the Season's Blessings. It's called the Urn of Curiosities, and it says boost the chance of receiving a second item when purchasing from the Purveyor of Curiosities. You have a 40% chance to receive an additional item. They also made it so that you could gamble uniques now from the Purveyor of Curiosities. So I have found that if you're trying to get a hold of one of these and you just need one desperately to make your build work, Gambling some armors, or rather the tunics, in this panel can actually be a very easy way to get your hands on at least a 750 version, if not an 800. It also does have a very unique graphic as well. So talking about that, the graphic on this is actually pretty cool. You got some under boobage there. I don't know why this one's got under boobage, but this one doesn't have under boobage. But it does have a very pretty look to it. And let me take my wolf off for a second. Kind of like the open back. It's got like a steel kind of a gorget, like around the neck. I do think it's a very interesting armor. It it's nice having like 1,000,000,000 different plates in here that you can potentially utilize for designs. There's tons of different armors and whatnot in the game, and this one in particular just has its own unique graphic, which is pretty cool. I do like the way that it dies too. It does have some pretty good dyeing options, as you can see. So you can mix and match it into different sets. They actually added a bunch more dye options in here too. So if you haven't seen the dye options that they added, they've definitely added a lot more colors, a lot more color variations that you can potentially throw onto the equipment and give it different looks. So definitely keep your eyes open for some of these new variations that they've added in. I think that's pretty much it for this particular piece of equipment. I do think that this is a good addition to the game, but I'm also a little afraid that it will get overshadowed by some of the other mythic uniques and armors that you can potentially put in this slot. Another big downside to this particular armor, and it really just has to do with resolve stacking, is that a lot of people are just stacking maximum resolve stacks because, of course, there is a Paragon glyph called Colossal, which gives you 2% multiplier for each stack of Resolve you have. So stacking Resolve stacks is very important to get yourself the most damage that you possibly can. Well, the only places that you can stack Resolves are your Amulet, your Helmet, your Armor, and your pants. And giving up your armor slot for the Jacinth Shell does remove 4 resolve, or up to 13 resolve stacks from your character, depending on how good you are at masterworking. And when I say good, I mean lucky. So that is an unfortunate downside to the armor. Hopefully, eventually, they cap out the number of resolve stacks that you can potentially get to, because it does kind of limit your choices in equipment by having like an unlimited resolve stacks, because at that point you just want to have as many resolve stacks as you can possibly get, and there's really no limit, right? It's sky's the limit. You get 14, like 13 on your pants, another 13 on your armor, that's like 26, another 13 on your helmet, that's what, 39, another 13 on your amulet, that's what, 40, 52. So like 52 stacks, and then I think you can get like quite a few from the Spirit Hall bonus. So you can get like at least 2 there, if not 4, depending on how you beef up the Spirit Hall. So like there's some various ways that you can potentially increase your resolve stacks, but it ends up being a large amount of multiplier. And unfortunately, if you utilize this armor, you are going to be missing out on that multiplier. Another kind of sad thing is that this is also your spot for your focus bonuses, or is it defensive? Your defensive bonuses, and there are a lot of good defensive skills on the tree. So speaking of the defensive skills, you obviously have Armored Hide, you've got Concussive Stomp, Counterattack, and Scourge. These are all actually really excellent. Concussive Stomp can straight up be used as a main ability to dish out damage. Scourge can be used as a main ability to dish out damage. It also has really good healing effectiveness. Counterattack is absolutely amazing because it gives you huge amounts of critical strike damage. And of course, Armored Hide, I think, is one of the more popular ones this season, because it pretty much just gives you a huge amount of block chance, as well as caps out your resolve stacks and gives you a passive resolve gain. So it's just probably on pretty much every character's bar this season. So when you give up the armor slot for this, you're also giving up your defensive bonuses. So, like, if you want to get +2 Scourge or +2 Armored Hide or whatever it is that you're utilizing. I think that pretty much covers everything about this particular item. Jacinth Shell is a pretty cool item, and I do think it's worth taking a look at for your builds. As always, I appreciate you guys watching. Be sure to hit that like button and the subscribe button, and keep watching.